Hello, salutations and felicitations, everybody. It is good to see you, and it is good to be seen by you. I, of course, am the one and only Bill Sylvie, aka the Dungeon Delver, coming to you live, loud, and clear on a Thursday evening. And boy, have we got a show for you tonight, folks. First of all, thank you to TXG for becoming a new member. We salute you, my friend. Welcome everybody, and a big special welcome to those of you who have decided to join us for this mad merry march of mundane stuff, breaking fun that we like to have around here. Thank you all very much. And if you've been on the bubble, if you've been sitting on the fence, if you haven't decided which lever to pull, red pill, blue pill, would you do me a favor right now? Would you click that subscribe button and click the bell icon for notifications? Because you're going to find out we actually do have a fair amount of fun here on this live stream that I like to bring folks on a nightly basis right here for your education, entertainment, and edification. And it's all for the cost of $0, just a button click. And hey, if you want to support the show in some way other, if you're like out there, but $0, I want to do more. You can become a patron for as little as $1, a YouTube member for as little as $2. I'd even it up, but I think YouTube, like the bottom tier that they'll let me price is $1.99. So I get it if you just want to go over to Patreon and do it there. Believe me, I completely understand. You can support us that way, but the best thing you can do is subscribe and tell your friends about it. Also, we do have some merch. That is a fantastic way to support me. And our merch, if you will, now includes Crom. That's right. The character record organizational manager software. It is, I would dare say, today's premier management tool for all of your first edition advanced Dungeons and Dragons characters, because it doesn't just create a character, it doesn't just let you customize a character, it lets you advance the character, it lets you treat a character to all the effects, all the bonuses and malices that they would receive through a standard game of Dungeons and Dragons. All that work, and not a single pizza stain or Coke spill to ruin months of effort on a piece of paper. You can do it right on your Windows PC. And before anyone asks, yes, we are looking at a Mac version. Maybe you like pencil and paper. Maybe you're like, hey, I don't need that. We still have some awesome merch. We have t-shirt design. We have all kind of merch design. And the design is by none other than Tracy Lesh. So check out my merch store. It's linked below. And that would be just awesome. And speaking of awesome, guys, tonight we are going to continue our deep dive into the Temple of Elemental Evil. So I hope you brought your torches. I hope you brought your swords. I hope you've got your spare armor in the event of green slime or crushing blows, because we're going to get into it tonight. And the person that's going to take us on this guided tour through myth and lore is a guy without whom, look, I'm going to be honest with you, there might not be the Delver's Dungeon, at least not as you know it, because when I was thawing out my love for first edition AD&D back in the late 90s, there was no print on demand. There was no go to drive. There was no get PDFs. No. If you wanted first edition AD&D, if you didn't stumble upon it in a used bookstore around town and you didn't already have it, you might just be out of luck, except for tonight's guest, who pioneered the way people get their hands on classic stuff. My first rejoining the fold was acquiring a dungeon master's guide, a monster manual, a player's handbook, a monster manual, to just a stack of the classics and a stack of classic modules from this guy on his sales on Usenet, if you can believe it. The original treasure trove auctions. So I am going to I'm gonna let that history speak for itself at another time. And welcome an awesome guy to the show. He's been here before, but if you haven't had a chance to listen to him talk, you're in for a treat tonight. Everybody, please welcome not just an awesome guy, but somebody I am proud to call a friend. Everybody say hello to the one and only Paul Stormberg. Paul, how are you, my friend?
Very good. Good to see you, Bill.
It's good to be seen by you, Paul.
I'm excited.
You're excited. I'm excited too. I see over on my computer that I actually have Facebook logged in on some of the interesting stuff. But we're gonna that is some TOEE 102 class level stuff that we're going to be getting into here in just a minute. How have you been, my friend?
Very good. Excellent. So just finished a huge auction for the collector's trove, 400 items. I had 106, 105 packages. So literally when I called you to say I'd be on the show, I was driving back from the post office with the last
Excellent.
packages shipped. So
right on. Well, you know, if you misshipped that Commodore calculator that belonged to Jim Ward, you know, I won't say anything. I'm not going to lie.
Jim Ward, and wasn't he punch?
You broke up just a little bit there, but yeah, so the Jim Ward hole punch. Now I was absolutely like I really wanted that Jim Ward catalog because I was a Commodore kid growing up. You know, my 8-bit computer is all Commodore, and of course I played D&D growing up, so I thought, what a great conversation piece that would make. But I am sure it went to someone who will love it just as much as I did, and so kudos to them. I got in early with what I thought was a pretty good bid, and then I lost it in the last 45 seconds, and I'm like, I'm not going to get in a bidding war. Fair play to whoever got it. And then when I saw what it went for, I'm like, good Lord, no, I was not going to go down that. That must have been a furious bidding war at the end.
That's right. That's because I shared a secret special message on the calculator to everybody else.
Yes. Confirmed functionality, right?
That's right. Have you ever seen the scene in have you seen the scene in Twin Peaks where Agent Cooper types out on a calculator and turns it upside down and puts it in front of Harry Truman, the sheriff, and
yes,
he's typing him messages on the calculator and keeps handing it. Classic.
Yes, I have seen that. It was great moments in American television. But well, I hope the now was this auction for the Ward estate?
No, there's just a whole bunch of different private collections, and a lot of the items came from collectors who had previously bought them in other auctions. So,
I see.
There were a lot of Jim Ward estate auctions, but they came from somebody who bought them from a previous auction. So
I gotcha. Well, it was interesting and fun to see that stuff come up, and like I said, congratulations to the people who got it. And like I was saying in the intro, you're why I was able to jump back in as quick, because it wasn't easy back in the late 90s. I'm just gonna grab me a Dungeon Master's Guide. That was not even a thing. So I was, I was very happy to stumble on your Usenet auctions. I remember asking on Rec Games FRP D&D, like, how do I do this? How do I get the books back? And people were like, yeah, go over to the auctions news group. There's this guy, the Collector's Trove. Get your stuff there. And well, here we are.
I think it was called, was it? It was like a alt collect. What alt collectables? I can't remember, but
I know,
but it was a Usenet group. So
yes, for you youngins, that was social media. Usenet or social media used to be email and Usenet, and that was it. That's how we had arguments on the internet back then. So, yeah, but yeah, good times. So, I know you Paul, you watch this show with a dedication that borders on fervent. I know that, Paul, so you don't have to tell me that you do. So I know that I don't have to tell you that the past few Thursdays when we haven't had guests, we have been taking a deep dive into the Temple of Elemental Evil. You've played that module once before, or at least read it, right?
Once or twice. You're passingly familiar with whoever the author was, but no, all kidding aside, yes. We've been deep diving Temple of Elemental Evil, and I thought we kind of got to a crux last time we talked about it, because we had I got to what I think is the creamy center of the Temple of Elemental Evil, and that is the potential to rescue Prince Thrommel. And let me tell you what, I call it the creamy center, but that is a tough nut to crack, because that's like, at first you can't see it, and then if you can see it, it doesn't look like there's anything there, and then if you think there's something there, it looks like a vampire. It's like layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of illusion before you get to the point where you're like, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't drive a stake in his heart and chop his head off. Which, let's be honest, Paul, that's probably been the fate of Prince Thrommel more times than you and I have had hot meals. My own adventuring party avoided that particular fate, so they did indeed rescue him.
Good. That's one of those things, though, that.
So, and the unluckiest guy in the group got the Sword of Answering. It's this guy couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with the broadside of a barn. He's bad at rolling. And so when it came down to Treasure Division and he got that sword, everybody was like, finally, you'll be able to hit somebody. Because it never misses.
Oh, yeah. But
Fragarat.
I think that's it. Fragarat. Fragarat. Wait, what was Thrommel's sword?
Scather is the one that's given to a rescuing hero that returns Thrommel's sword to him.
Yes, that is correct. Okay, so this is a good place to start, because I want to talk about I want to talk about glitches in the Temple of Elemental Evil first.
There's a lot in there.
I know there's a lot in there, and this is a good place to start. And do you know where I'm going to start with this, Paul? I think you probably do, but you.
Oh, I do. You're going to start with wand stone chimneys. What are wand stone chimneys? That's what you're going to start with.
No, actually, that was not it. I wanted to know why a paladin is walking around, how a paladin is walking around with a chaotic good intelligence sword.
That's a good point. And
Fragarat
what is a paladin of Greyhawk doing with a sword that belongs to a Celtic demigod?
Exactly. exactly. Why is he walking around with that mythic sword? So, do you have any inside baseball on that, Paul?
I do indeed.
Okay,
Gary
lay it
had
on us.
read Fragarat, which had read about Fragarat, which was the sword wielded by Kulane, however you say his name. That
Yeah,
guy.
that guy, the
and
big
and
C.
of course all of those Celtic deities are chaotic good. so
Mhm.
I think that where in the translation between the swords, somebody said, "Oh well, if that's Kulane or whatever his name is, I don't even know how to say it. If that's his sword, well then it's got to be a chaotic sword." So I have a feeling somebody changed it in the editorial process without telling Gary.
Yeah. So, so with that, I mean, DM to DM, and obviously, you know, our audience, all the ships at sea, listening to us. What do you think? Do you make the sword neutral good and therefore wieldable by chaotics or lawfuls? Do you state that the sword is chaotic good and Thrommel's just going to get the shit shocked out of him every time he touches it? Do you say that the sword has somehow reached an agreement with Thrommel so that Thrommel can wield a chaotic good sword? What's your take on it?
I just plain made it a lawful good sword.
Simplest is
That's it.
best.
Yes.
That's it.
And, you know, I understood the purpose of it, why Fragarat is a Celtic demigod sword. And of course, it's a, you know, it's supposed to be chaotic good in alignment because of that. But, you know, but I would say that if a game master wants to make some quirky thing as a play on an editorial, what's clearly an editorial issue, I you know, I have no problem with that. But in my
Sure.
home game, I just, you know, made it a lawful good sword. I mean, he calls for it and it flies to his hand. You could say that whoever kidnapped him there switched the swords to the chaotic good one, hoping that that would be the final, what do they say? The final jape against the forces of good is that he summons the sword of answering, and it hits his hand, and he's instantly killed by the electrical damage. So there's your twist. I mean, if all of those things are tricks, right? If they're all tricks to get the party to kill Thrommel, then the second that Thrommel sees a sword and sees a sword that looks like a sword and calls it to his hand, dead. And
That
then somewhere Eos is laughing.
yeah. Well, so you bring up the forces of evil, and that brings me to another bit of lore. Now, you and I have discussed this, but I think there might well be some folks out in the audience, maybe who are not present for that, or for whatever reason they might not know. Now, once upon a time, a fresh-faced, thinner, younger dungeon delver looked at the lone mention in T1, because setting aside the matter of it's supposed to be WG1, not T1, so just putting that aside, there is but one mention. I mean, if the entirety of the Temple of Elemental Evil deals with the imprisonment of Zugmatoi, why then is Lareth a human? Why is he being mentioned as most favored of Loth? What has she got to do with all of this? Our initial thinking way back once upon a time was gotta be a typo, gotta be an error. There's, you know, he was thinking ahead to the G series or whatever, and it skipped past editing. There's no tie-in with Loth here. What's the story, Paul?
Well, so I asked Gary a huge series of trivia questions back in the late 90s. And I think it was called Thus Spake Gary Gygax was the title. And it appeared in Oerth Journal. And I asked him all of those burning questions. And if you can still find that issue of the Oerth Journal, it has some amazing Gary answers on a couple of things, like what was the invoked devastation? And then he describes it, and it's pretty amazing. So one of my questions was, hey, Gary, I noticed that in the Temple of Elemental Evil, there's this triangle thingy there's this inverted triangle circumscribing or enclosing a letter Y. And I said, in the G series, that's the symbol of the Elder Elemental God. What the heck is it doing in there? And Gary said, well, you've sussed out a deep secret. And I was pretty excited. He said, when I told Tramp that the symbol was an eye of fire, which is that symbol, which is the triangle encompassing the letter Y with the points of the arms of the Y reaching to the vertices of the triangle. That is the symbol of the Elder Elemental God. And Gary told Tramp, it's also known as the Eye of Fire symbol. And if you look at your Facebook messages, I've enclosed a picture of the Eye of Fire and the Eye of Fire according to Cook Signs, or Koch Signs, I think is his name. Anyways, he was a German guy who did all of these ancient symbols and symbology. And one of the symbols in there, and a lot of the symbols for Greyhawk that you see in the portentous glyphs and sigils and that sort of thing, all of those come from a book called I think it's Signs and Symbols by Cook, K-O-C-H. Anyways, if you look in that book, there's a symbol called an Eye of Fire, which is either a square set on edge or a diamond with an X through it, or it can be this triangle with the Y inside of it. Well, when Gary told Tramp, he said, I want you to make the symbol of the cult, I want it to be drawn as an Eye of Fire. But what Gary was saying was an Eye of Fire, this symbol. And maybe Gary sketched out the symbol for Tramp, but then Tramp forgot about it. And he just remembered that he was supposed to make an Eye of Fire symbol. And thus, Lareth and all of these guys have the Eye of Fire, the literal Eye of Flame, as you're showing there.
Yes, the pastel cover of Village of Hamlet, the art by Dave Trampier.
Right. So that's literally a misinterpretation of Gary saying Eye of Fire. What he really wanted it to be is that that symbol that I shared with you on Facebook, which I don't know if you can get that.
I can't just shoot them to me an email real quick, and we'll talk while they come over, and then we can share those with the audience.
Okay.
But there's one thing, but going back to the mention of Loth, and of course you mentioned the symbol of certain of the drow being what was supposed to have been her symbol portrayed in Village of Hamlet and later Temple of Elemental Evil. So Gary's mention of Loth in T1, that was no error. He meant to tie them together that way.
Yeah. So I have had the privilege of seeing all of the character sheets used in the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign.
Okay.
Because I have handled Gary's estate and collection for his widow, I have actually seen the Temple of Elemental Evil character sheets for Otis and for Bernay and for Rufus and for Terjan. And of course, those were all played by 20-something Skip Williams, played Rufus. And on his character sheet, it says Rufus of Skipperton as the town. And of course, Skip Williams. Yeah. Anyway,
Right.
so then also played was Terjan, the cleric. And that was played by Tim Jones, who ended up being an editor at TSR for a while. But he was a young kid, went to school with Ernie. Ernie, of course, played Bernay. And I only know this because there's an accent over the E on his character sheet. So it's not Bernie, but it's Bernay. And then, of course, there is a character sheet for the farm boy, Otis. And eventually the farm boy, Otis, is played by a very young Luke Gygax, who's 7 years old at the time. And eventually he works him up into be Otis the Ranger. There's also Jaru the Druid, who is played by Tim Kask. And ultimately, Rob Kuntz shows up with Robilar in the game. But those initial characters were all kind of young guys, and Gary wanted to have a campaign that was away from the main Greyhawk campaign. And so he created the Village of Hamlet and the Temple of Elemental Evil for those players to go through. And then one snowy day in January of 1977, Gary wanted Tim Kask to come pick him up. And Rob Kuntz was hanging out with him, and at the little gray house in Lake Geneva, they drove over to Gary's house to pick him up when he lived just west of town before he moved out to Clinton, but after he lived at 330 Center Street. And it started snowing so badly, they all decided to sit down and play. And Gary was running Temple of Elemental Evil for some of the younger guys, and Rob and Tim heard about it and started horning into the game. So anyways, but that was in very early 1977. And the character sheets are all written on 1976 stock character sheets. But then at some point, when they get 4th, 5th level, they switch to those old Dungeons and Dragons character sheets. You know, the lined ones with the TID armor class 0 and all of that, the armor class adjustment section and the place for your character sketch in the corner.
Yeah, yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons logos. Those were actually came out in 1978, but by 1977, they had this very early handwritten copyright on them. And I think they were used just around the TSR group as they were playtesting things.
Okay.
So those character sheets having 1977 on them tell me that they were playing the Temple game in 1977. So Gary at the time was getting ready, and I think that was in the winter of 1977. And then as 1978 comes around, Gary starts writing this whole giant series for a convention in July. That's Origins that he writes the giant series for.
Right.
And so here it is. Those are the character sheets, right?
Okay.
And so what's the copyright down at the bottom?
Let's see.
Oh, I couldn't see it.
Let's see. This is somebody's hand recreation of it.
You're gonna have to zoom in on it.
Yeah, they don't give
at the bottom of the first page. It's the bottom.
They do not give credit because this is a recreation.
Oh, it says Wizards of the Coast down there. Ooh, that's terrible.
Yeah. This is somebody's recreation, unfortunately.
Anyway, so Gary decides that he is going to create a huge campaign arc with the Giant series. Now, obviously, his players are too low level for the Giant series. They're only 4th or 5th level, and they're going through the Temple at the time. But Gary knows that this event is coming up, and he writes this huge adventure arc where you're supposed to go through the whole temple, and at a certain point, the temple leads directly to the Giant series, and then the Drow series, and then the finale of the Drow series.
Right.
So in Gary's campaign, the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign starts in 1977, carries into 1978, and Gary writes this whole arc where the players that Ziggurat Moy is imprisoned there, and Ziggurat Moy was imprisoned there pretty early on, but he always had this idea that something bigger and more evil was there, and that Ziggurat Moy was going to use that to her own purposes, to wield elemental power for evil. So Gary wrote the Giant series arc and then the Drow arc, and then decided that there would be some sort of finale. But and so it gets a little complicated. But what happens is that Rob and Tim come in and butt into this game in the winter of 77, 78, and ruin Gary's whole campaign. Basically, Rob just goes through it, kicks everything's ass, and destroys everything. And Tim hears that Rob is ruining Gary's campaign and wants to play the local druid to kind of check the depredations, because the younger players can't do a damn thing about a 13th level fighter wrecking the entire dungeon.
Here's Robilar.
Yeah. And so, well, that pretty much scrapped the whole thing. However, Gary had already written this huge campaign arc, starting with the Temple of Elemental Evil, going to the Giant series, going to the Drow series, and then having a final confrontation with Loth. That was kind of always Gary's plan. But behind the scenes of all these supervillains, Iaz, Ziggurat Moy, Loth, behind all of these supervillains or demigods or goddesses is this elemental evil, which is an ancient Cthulhu-like power, and Gary describes it a power of incredible creative or incredible elemental and destructive powers. In other words, not elemental like lava forming the crust of the earth and making a happy planet for people to live on, but volcanoes that wipe out villages and destroy continents. And so each of these evil creatures, these evil demigods or goddesses, want to use that power because it's a creative and it is also a destructive power. And each of them wants to use that creative, destructive power for their own ends. And so Ziggurat Moy is the first to try to use it. And then Iaz basically partners with her to use it. And then Loth also ends up wanting to use it. So the whole campaign arc is that the players are supposed to get up to 8th level, because I've done the calculations. A party of 5 or 6 players can get up to 8th or 9th level if they finish the entire Temple of Elemental Evil. Well, the beginning level for somebody going into G1 is 8th through 10th level, right? So TSR at one point after Gary was gone kind of decided they were going to connect the two series by putting the slavers in the middle. But that was never Gary's intention. It was supposed to be the Temple of Elemental Evil. They'd go right into the Giant series. That would lead to the D series. And eventually, they would have a confrontation with Loth. And the whole campaign arc would come back to the Temple of Elemental Evil for the big conclusion.
Okay,
so that's Gary's original campaign arc.
Right.
So why is Lareth there? And why does he worship Loth? But where's the Eye of Fire symbol. And the Eye of Fire symbol is the symbol for the Elder Elemental God. Well, also Falrinth, the wizard. Can we talk about Falrinth, wizard?
Absolutely, we can talk about Falrinth.
So now Gary had another spy for Loth in the Temple of Elemental Evil, and that was Falrinth. Falrinth was a wizard who had secretly, without the rest of the reconstituted worshippers of Zugget and Yuz, had secretly found the death orb, or yellow skull.
Mm-hmm.
And he was looking for the 4 gems. Well, originally in the campaign, it was not 4 gems. So if you look at the node maps in the bottom level of the Temple of Elemental Evil,
mm-hmm.
you will see they come in 4 shapes. An 8-pointed star, a square, a triangle, and a circle. Those are the symbols of the various elemental cults. The 8-pointed star is the symbol of the fire cult. The square is the symbol of the water cult. The triangle is the symbol of the earth cult. And finally, the circle is the symbol of the air. So I thought to myself, well, why did Gary make the square water? Water's not square. Why didn't he make the circle the symbol of water? I debated this and I thought, well, a circle is the shape of a bubble, which is air, which is life in water. You don't want life, water, bubbles. No, you want death. So what form of water causes death? Well, ice does, Bill, especially when it falls on you in big squares and cubes.
Truth?
Something like that. So anyways, so all of those things, you'll notice that the nodes have those 4 shapes, right?
Right.
Okay. So at the very end of the Drow series, the party has a chance to confront the material form of Loth. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, there they are.
Right.
All right. So when they finally confront Loth, they find this platinum sphere. They call it a platinum egg. But inside this platinum egg are 4 shapes, Bill. Do you know what 4 shapes those are?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say we have a triangle, a circle, a square. And am I getting warmer?
Indeed, you do get it now. And this is the dark secret that I sussed out when I was questioning Gary on these design details. So it is a bronze 8-pointed star.
Mm-hmm.
It is a pale blue cube of crystal. It is a silver sphere, and it is a black iron pyramid. And those are the elemental shapes. However, Bill, they are not 2-dimensional items. So they are actually 3-dimensional items. So it's not a square, it's a cube. It's not a circle, it's a sphere.
Right.
It's not a triangle, it's a pyramid. You note that in the Temple of Elemental Evil, when you go into the Earth Temple, the main temple is a 4-sided pyramid. In the middle of the temple is a 4-sided pyramid.
Right.
But then, what is an 8-pointed star? Well, that's impossible to really show as a 2-dimensional item with 8 points and a 3-dimensional item with 8 points. What it is, Bill, is it is a tessellated octahedron. Indeed, that is 2 tetrahedrons stuck together to form what's called a Merkaba star or a tessellated octahedron.
Right.
So those are your 4 symbols. Those 4 symbols are in the possession of Loth. How did she get them? Well, Falrinth is in the temple, and he has found the yellow skull, or the death orb, the gold skull that has 4 sockets in it to hold 4 objects. Now, at some point, Gary's whole plan got messed up. So he had to exchange the 4 shapes with 4 gems. And he just gives them different colors and different abilities, and they plug in, and there's no special shapes anymore. But in the original campaign, those 4 shapes are the Elder Keys. Those are the keys that release the Elder Elemental God from his hidden prison beneath the Temple of Elemental Evil.
So he is the one that originally you would have confronted at the end of the D series on the Sunless Sea, correct?
No.
No, he is not. Okay.
Remember, you've got a lot of evil goddesses and demigods who are trying to use the destructive elemental forces that are situated around the Temple of Elemental Evil. And the key to using those, remember, Ziggurat and Iaz worked together to create the Death Orb. And then they put the 4 elemental stones in there and use that to create these nodes, these partial elemental planes, right? Well, do you know what I found in Gary's collection? I found all 4 node maps from the Temple of Elemental Evil. But I looked and I could see that they were all erased. And I also noted that the 4th level of the temple also had erasing. And when I looked at the greater temple map and I looked where it had been erased, guess what it said? Demon Web Pits is what it said on the map. So what you're looking at is Gary's original design for the conclusion of the D series. Loth's Lair on the Abyss. The Demon Web Pits is the 4th level of the Temple of Elemental Evil. And that's why the nodes exist. The nodes, instead of, I think Frank Mentzer, when he got the manuscript, renamed them to the Air Elemental Node and the Earth Elemental Node. Right. Well, they were actually all called the Pits. Those were the Demon Web Pits. The nodes were. It was Loth who was throwing these people into the pits of these nodes. And how did she create them, Bill? Somebody in the Temple of Elemental Evil, some agent of hers, ended up getting the Elder Keys, those 4 shapes, and giving them to her. So the whole campaign arc is supposed to be players go investigate. And remember, what do we always say about Greyhawk? It is wheels within wheels.
Wheels, right? Within wheels, yes.
Gears within gears. And there are lots of layers to it. So you see 3 powerful gods, demigods, goddesses, all working to use these 4 elemental shapes. These 4, I call them, my word for them is the Elder Keys. Gary never called them that because he never got around to finishing that. But I refer to them as the Elder Keys because Gary revealed to me that the temple had a hidden prison of the Elder Elemental God. And only by the players doing the right thing, and then in parentheses he's put, or the wrong thing, would release the Elder Elemental God. However, if they were very shrewd, they could imprison the Elder Elemental God deeper into his prison and cut him off from the prime material plane. So, who worships the elder elemental god, Bill? Who's our favorite drow female? Drow female, if you want.
Eclavdra.
That's right. So, guess who else wants those keys?
Lady E herself.
That's right. And guess who doesn't want her to have them? Loth.
Loth, that's right.
She does not want Loth does not want Eclavdra to have them, because Eclavdra has a cult of elemental evil and she is growing in power. If she were to get control of the 4 elder keys, as I call them, she would have power equivalent to Loth. So Loth used the keys to make the demon web pits, or the 4 nodes. So if Eclavdra has the 4 keys, then she could have equivalent creative and destructive powers. So, but they get rid of the nodes in the temple Dave Sutherland sees a pattern on a bath mat. Gary's really busy. He says, look at this cool Celtic knotwork pattern. I'm going to work it into some art. It'd make a cool dungeon level. And Gary goes, you're hired. And Gary puts Dave Sutherland in charge of it. And Dave uses that pattern to create the demon web, but the pits disappear. And so Gary turns the demon web pits over to Frank, and Frank turns them into the 4th level of the Temple of Elemental Evil, which Gary had not finished yet.
Right. So I could say something very salty right now, but Paul, I'm going to be a good person and not do that. And we're just going to focus on the positive stuff, because we've got a question Daniel Rowan asks, because this looms large in my mind, but I want you to put a pin in that, in Sutherland's demon web, because you are constantly blowing my socks off. I can't wear shoes around you, Paul, or else the socks will just fly right through them. But I think I may have you tonight, but to worry about that later. Is there any connection between the elemental evil god and Tharizdun? And I have parked the map right there on purpose, because we see the evil spiral there. Was there any faint connection?
No. And that's not even the symbol. That's not even the symbol of Tharizdun. The symbol of Tharizdun is the inverted black ziggurat.
All right.
So some point later, that kind of got worked in. But Gary said that, and in that Thus Spake Gary Gygax, he said the inverted black ziggurat is the symbol of Tharizdun imprisoned, and an upright or a proper ziggurat, black ziggurat, is the symbol of him freed, or possibly, I believe that there was a spiral symbol. But in any case, that god was based on a god in Rob Kuntz's campaign whose name was Zidun. And I think it was Z''D''UUNN. Zidun.
Okay.
So while both of those DMs, Rob and Gary, were using concepts of Tharizdun or Zidun or that sort of thing, it doesn't have anything to do with Gary's concept of the Temple of Elemental Evil. As if the story wasn't complex enough already.
As if it wasn't complex enough. Okay. So I've been thinking about this. I'm running my Monday night group, my private group, for those of you who are curious. I did not misspeak and mean the Tuesday night group. But the Monday night group is currently running through the G series. And of course, for these modules, and Paul can back me up on this, guys, if you're going to run the G series, you've got homework to do as a DM. if you've never before, if you've just said, I can pick up a module and run it by reading it the first time, maybe that's true of everything else. You will not do that with GDQ. You will not do that with GDQ. Maybe you can fake your way through G1, but that will be the end of it. Or that'll be the end of you faking your way through it once you start it. Once you start to hit G2. And there are parts in G1 that pertain to this storyline. And I'm thinking of the for lack of a better term, haunted, ruined temple in the southernmost portion of the dungeon level that, again, as a DM, you're not going to, because it is such a tonal break. Because I mean, the whole module is essentially you're going full ham on these guys in a Beowulf style longhouse setting, and it's heroic, and the Conan music swells, and then you just stagger straight into the Amityville Horror meets The Exorcist, and it is such a tonal shift that if you haven't read for it before, you're going to hit a wall. But I digress. Paul, I think it would actually be a bit leading you know where I was going with this. So I'm not going to ask it as a riddle. I'm just going to state it as fact. You do not destroy Loth at the end of Q1. I don't mean as an option. I don't mean as like, oh, well, if you get to this point, she'll broker a deal with you. You do not destroy Loth at the end of Q1.
No, that's not supposed to be the end of it.
And here's why. Here's why. As soon as you mentioned the demon web, I remembered I have been intending to talk to you about this in private, but all of this is so wrapped up in the temple that I feel like it is mentioning now. Loth. So the web itself is what is in the abyss. The web itself is what is in the abyss. What made me clock the whole idea that you don't kill Loth, even if you beat her and reduce her to 0 hit points, you don't kill Loth, is the fact, read the description of Loth's prison chamber. Where is it, Paul? It's on an asteroid at the edge of the galaxy.
Right.
The galaxy is in the prime material plane. Every place you go off the demon web, including where Loth's spider ship is, which is where you confront Loth, is outside of the abyss.
Correct.
You fight her and kill her in the spider ship. All you've done is buy yourself, what is it, a century? Or is it 10 years for
it's
demon
100
princes?
years.
Right. So if you're a human, you're fine. If you're a gray elf, you're like, shit. but if people have mistakenly thought, oh yeah, you kill Loth. No, you don't. You banish her back to the demon web. You set her plans back. But even if you beat Loth, you don't beat Loth. And I think a lot of people operate under the assumption, hey, she's only got 66 hit points. Maybe she gets off a couple of heals. She's a chump. She's like, if you know this reference, if you don't, I completely understand. She's like the spider mastermind in Doom. She goes down like a chump. It's nothing to take Loth out. She's not at home. All you've done is banish her back to the abyss. And again, if your characters live long enough, or if they have families, it behooves a good DM to have her pop up again and again, because just because you've killed a demigoddess doesn't mean you've killed a demigoddess. Agree, disagree? What's your thoughts?
I agree 100%. And my players, when they got to the final mirror statue room, ended up defeating Loth with a fairy fire spell.
I remember you telling me about that. I remember. So relate that to our audience.
So it comes down to the end, which, I think, credit to Dave Sutherland for an incredibly zany, great dungeon, right? I mean, Q1 it's got some great stuff. I mean, it's got some rooms that are some of the best, most creative encounters in D&D. And so for that, I think it's great. I think some people didn't like it because it wasn't dark enough, right? And but some people have pointed out, you know, after going through the G series and the D series, it was kind of nice to have kind of a funhouse dungeon at the end of all. It was a relief.
Truth.
You know, like one of the encounters are trolls in a dark room. 10 trolls in a dark room. Oh no, Bill, what are our 13th level characters going to do? The room is dark.
Right.
And there's 10 trolls. There's an encounter in G3 with 56 trolls, Bill. 56. Oh,
I know the room.
Room with 10 trolls. We're going to... Anyways, all that aside, the final encounter has Loth trying to escape through, you know, magical means. But she has the ability to teleport at will. So I'm not really sure why she has to use the gimmick that is in that particular room that you know about.
Yes.
But anyways, there she is, cornered. The only person left alive is the party's wizard. He has only 6 hit points left. And he uses a ring of shooting stars and uses the spark function. And Loth fails her magic resistance and fails her save and takes enough damage to make her have to debate, should I get out of here or should I bite this guy the next round, poison him to death, and kill him? Because she had used all her spells to wipe out basically a 13th level party of 13 to 15 people. It was a huge party. But she had used guerrilla tactics and slowly mowed them down, whittled them away. So the very next round, the wizard holds out his hand with the ring again. And I think, well, you know, I would think there would be a reasonable chance that Loth would think that he could send another shower of sparks on him and has a very real chance of destroying her material form. So,
right.
But what he was going to do was he was going to actually use the fairy fire function of the ring and then attack her with his dagger the next round. And so what happened was I said, well, I'm going to roll a die. And if it comes up 1 or 2 on a D6, I'm just going to say that Loth's intelligence makes her think there's a chance that I'm going to get killed by this guy's magic ring the next round. And she decided to leave. And that is how my party defeated Loth with a fairy fire spell.
Excellent. Now, and I'm guessing at this point she had healed herself all 3 times that she possibly could.
I mean, the party had grown.
It was a slobber knocker, right? Dude, I mean, at this point,
there was a lot. There was a lot of damage done.
People are clicking on dry cylinders.
I think her first psionic attack was domination to get one of the party's fighters to run himself through with a sword.
Ooh, ouch.
And he failed his resistance against her and he killed himself.
That's brutal.
It was bad. But I thought to myself, you know, it would really be demoralizing for the party. So, yeah. Hey, you know, when you play an evil demigoddess, you got to play her to the hilt.
Yeah, I mean, you know, at this point, the party's got to put their big boy pants on, and it doesn't matter, you know, if she's walking around as basically Ungoliant, or, you know, on the flip side, she's in full, you know, evil drow dummy mommy mode. They got to kill her, and they got to kill her quick. Doesn't matter what she looks like. If she's throwing out that kind of damage, you got to offer. So they drove her off with a fairy fire spell. And I love that story. I absolutely love that story. And it is so refreshing and at the same time perplexing. And I'm going to have to go looking for the the interview you did with Gary, where you picked his brain over this to find out.
Gary Gygax.
Thus spake Gary Gygax.
But that was the beginning of people understanding that the elder elemental god was behind the Temple of Elemental Evil. That was the first time Gary revealed it publicly.
For those of you who are curious, let's see. It's in Earth Journal 12. Let's see.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And where do I get this? Let's see. Because I have it. I have a link to it here. I had a link to it there. I closed it because I'm an idiot. And I will share this link up with you guys. Well, here, I can just do this. Earth Journal 12. It's on the Internet Archive. Come on, any second now. We'll try that too. So next question about the Temple of Elemental Evil, because we mentioned him and I'm again trying to be polite about it. How much of Frank's how much did Frank go off the reservation, if at all, with his input into TOEE?
Frank pretty much did the nodes.
Okay.
And edited everything together and tried to remove all of Gary's mention of the elder elemental gods. But there were certain elements that got left in. Like there's a room called the Room of Eyes, but they're Eye of Fire symbols. They're the elder elemental god symbols. And that's in the Temple of Elemental Evil. That survives. There's a branched staff, which also exists, which I believe the branched staff is Lovecraft's elder sign branched staff. But
now
what else is a branched staff, Bill?
A why?
Well, no, it's actually a tentacle rod, Bill.
Okay. I was thinking the top-down view of the tetrahedron again,
Yeah.
but I was close. Tentacle rod, aka the rod of stop struggling human. You're just making this kinkier. I shouldn't say such things. Paul's a good boy. I shouldn't expose him to my degeneracy.
So, do you want to know what the elder elemental god's true name is?
Sure.
Vilp Akath Cho Rentak.
Vilp Akath Cho Rentak.
And do you know?
Now that I've said that, I'm probably going to get consumed by something terrible tonight.
Do you know who imprisoned him? Oh, you have to say it 3 times, Bill. Do you know who imprisoned him?
Who imprisoned him?
A Baklunish god named Dorga Torgu.
Okay.
All of that is in my Q&A session with Gary.
I look forward to reading it, because the more we talk about this, the more I want to do this and not what actually got published by TSR. This is much cooler.
This is definitely much cooler.
It really and truly is. So I want to come back though to you've opened up a can of worms here with the tying of that. I thought, okay, Paul will mention, a couple of light. No. So
there's this thing about, the big encounters is going to happen in the Sunless Sea, and that was never part of it. The big encounter was supposed to be against Loth, and then returning to the temple to finish the job that has started, because the players have to get the Elder Keys away from all of these evil forces who have been using them repeatedly. Like, what Loth does in Sutherland's version is uses the Elder Keys to create all those links to all those planes to draw them into her webs. So instead of linking to little dimensional nodes, she's linked to all of these prime material worlds, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a little bit of Gary still left in Q1, and it's still tied to those. So the very first encounter, I assume I can talk about this stuff. I mean, we've been dropping spoilers the entire time. So
yeah. Oh my God, yes.
So one of the encounters on the web is with Vrox, right? Type 1 demons.
Right.
And what do? They are on these tall columns, pilasters, sitting at these cornices way above the party's heads, and they levitate them up and drop them to their deaths, and they swoop down and attack the party from above. And then when you defeat them, what happens?
Paul, I don't recall.
The silver sphere begins to hum and glow, and the party is transported to the next level. So The silver sphere is the symbol of air, right?
Right.
So defeating the creatures who are flying, who are trying to kill you by pulling you up in the air, the next encounter, Bill, is with Type 2 demons. And they try to drown you in water. And guess what the symbol for that is? It's a square.
It's the square.
Right. And then you run into a room that has a bunch of Type 3 demons, and they're in an inferno. And you have to somehow fight them in an inferno. Fire.
Right.
Now, there's not a fourth one, because I don't believe Gary ever finished the fourth encounter for Earth. But I think he handed Dave Sutherland a partial manuscript with those encounters in, and Dave incorporated them into the dungeon.
So that's interesting, because there's, I've read, I've talked to a lot of people who said that, Sutherland fumbled it at the goal line, that he completely went off the reservation and, just kind of made this ridiculous funhouse dungeon that had nothing to do with what you were leading up to, and that it ties so tightly, not just into the Gary's original vision, but all the way back into the Temple of Elemental Evil. That's fascinating to me.
And all the way back to 1977 is when he first came up with this campaign arc between December of 77 and winter of 78. That was his time. He was right there. He had laid out the whole campaign right at that time and started writing the Giant series, and it coincided with Origins in July. And he had the Drow series finished, or the Drow series. I say Drow because that's what my 8th grade boy said to me. This sounds like Drow. So I pronounce it that way. All my friends pronounce it that way. All the cool kids pronounce it Drow. Anyways, yes. So, and 1979 is rolling around, and Gary's getting pretty busy, and he starts writing the Temple of Elemental Evil manuscript, and he finishes it in March of 1980. But the whole time he's thinking this whole campaign arc. But then he's so busy, he doesn't have time. He turns Q1 over to Dave Sutherland. And guess what? Dave Sutherland's version does not even appear in Q1. It was super heavily edited by someone we all know. And he changed the way Sutherland had it. Sutherland decided you can't kill, and this is from my personal communications with Dave. Dave said, I didn't think you should be able to kill a goddess. So I created a situation where that Loth was indefeatable on her home plane and that she could not be killed. So Dave had it that the players were supposed to sneak aboard the spider ship, and he said it was like getting on board a German U-boat as a prisoner and then having to sabotage the U-boat, even though you had no chance to defeat all the Germans on board. If you could sabotage the U-boat and blow it up, you might die, but you would take out the U-boat and all the Germans with you. That was Sutherland's concept for the module. And you notice how the engine room and that whole thing is pretty well described for what happens when you push this button or do this lever.
Yeah.
Dave's thought was the players would be ultimately put in a situation where they couldn't defeat Loth and would have to resort to destroying the ship, which would then destroy the web and would end her reign of terror. So kind of like she would kind of die like she does in the D&D cartoon. I got caught in my own webs.
Well, I mean, that is all of this is fascinating. I mean, that's why I love having you on, Paul. Like I just you know, we'll get some TOE chalk. Nope. I mean, we did. Or we are not. It's not.
You get the great unrealized super campaign of our lifetime, and the only players that. Well, do you want to know how far the heroes from the Otis and Rufus and Bernays, and you want to know how far those guys got?
Oh, absolutely.
And do you know how I eventually figured out that the Temple of Elemental Evil was connected? Because on Otis's character sheet, it says Drow sword and Drow shield.
Huh.
And Otis was 10th level. Bernays got up to 10th or 11th level. And they went through the whole Drow series, but did not complete it. So Gary had those players play through the whole thing. So Otis starts as a farm boy in 1977 when Luke is 7 years old and ends up by 1978 being a 10th level ranger and fighting Obmi in the Hall of the Fire Giant. And Gary said that when Ernie saw the Vault of the Drow, he said, no. And the whole party turned around, and that was the end of the campaign.
just went home.
Yeah, Ernie was like, no. Oh, City of Drow? Are you kidding me? After all we've been through? Just no.
Well, so we bring up Drow, and so I wanted to ask you a question then about Drow, because we're kind of, you know, we're connecting the dots, so to speak, here. Now I know that the Slavers series is not one of Gary's, and even though it is set in Greyhawk and has some pretty deep Greyhawk roots to it, it doesn't it's not necessarily part of this arc. But from a DMing perspective, if you're playing the metagame, nobody doesn't know what Drow are. Nobody doesn't know what they are. They're
unfortunately now no.
I mean, imagine.
Although, wait. My party, the first time that they were fairy fired by Drow and they had not encountered them yet, they were like, "It's those freaking druids again." They thought it was druids hiding in the shadows and using poison darts against them. That sounds like druids.
That's
So
druids.
they were convinced it was a band of druids who was behind the giants. Because I think druids can use darts.
But although I will say, imagine it's 1977, you've grabbed your copy of the Monster Manual, you leaf through it for the first time, and you're like, oh, there's dark elves. Well, that's interesting. And then bam, here comes the G series, you know? I mean, that must have been such a neat, oh my God moment. But
when my party entered the second level of the dungeon in G3, they had a storm giantess with them and a titan.
Yes. My Monday group is currently employing the storm giantess as well. So very, very wise, very wise.
But Snur had got his butt beat so badly that he went to the Rakshasas and said, listen, I'm going to I need your help. I'll make a deal with you. You know, I'll give you all of this magical power. Any magic items that we can't use, they are yours. Right. And so the Rakshasas are like, okay, we'll help you out. And that's when my party found out that Rakshasas are immune to 7th level and lower spells, which was pretty much every freaking spell they could cast.
I've got to tell you, one of the funniest things I ever did as a DM, I thought about, I had a party of adventurers in Castle Greyhawk run into my Monday night group, and they were all Rakshasas, and I had statted them all up.
Nice.
And I had a Rakshasa fighting melee toe-to-toe with a dwarf. And I thought, okay, Rakshasa, they're evil. They're going to focus on damaging. Paul, I had this Rakshasa every round reaching over and grabbing the dwarf by the top of the head and hitting him with shocking grasp. It was hilarious. I mean, it was absolutely hilarious. Hang on a second, Paul.
Are you having a hurricane, Bill? Good thing you're
sorry.
Yeah,
well, I'm not. I am in a garage. There is no basement in Florida.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah. But
be safe.
Yeah, no. So the Rakshasa, like, I figured, okay, Rakshasa, they're 8 hit dice. That means 8th level magic user. What is he going to have memorized? 5 or 6 castings of shocking grasp. So he kept reaching over and grabbing the dwarf by the head. I just described every time he hits him, he leans over and grabs you by the head. So they healed him, and the player is like, so Bill, my Grindel the dwarf, he's okay, no permanent damage. And I said, well, you know, there's a couple of weeks when you periodically piss yourself uncontrollably, but other than that, you're fine. But Gonzalo asks, Ostler Gundagoot, is that a character name? Is that a character?
You've sussed out a deep secret. Shall I share the lore of the names of the people in the game?
At least Ostler Gundagoot.
Ostler Gundagoot is just a funny, old-fashioned name. Gary had a book called Pop Lollies and Bellabones. You got it?
I absolutely have Pop Lollies and Bellabones.
But both of those names are in there. Oh, I lost Bill. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I'm back. This is by Susan Kells Sperling. You can get this on Amazon. It is still in publication. And I use it for NPC names all the time because it's got cool names in it. Fonkin, Haughty Peak,
so
Gleepworp the Eye Biter.
Yeah, as Bill knows, all of the Giant series and Drow series pre-generated characters that were used in the tournament are all words that come from that book. And so when people were telling Gary, oh, those are stupid names, who would come up with those names? I would come up with Elrond Moorcock or something like that. And Gary would just laugh because Gary knew how clever those names were. But people who uneducated in erudite words to understand, where he could say Faffel Dweemercrafter meant a stuttering spellcaster, and that Darg Blanc meant a workhorse with bruises. and on and on. Funk and Hottie Peak is a foolish stupid head. and on and on. And they all come out of that book. Well, since he was doing the Giant series and the Temple of Elemental Evil at the same time, he drew a lot of his names from that book. And Ostler Gundagut is one of them. But there are some other names in there, Bill, that are very interesting.
Yes.
The traitor, Nira Melib, is Brian Bloom, anagramized.
Mm-hmm.
The traitors, Ranos Stavel and Gremeg, who are despicably evil and fat and gross and blah, 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 blah. They're not made out to be very flattering because they're agents of the enemy. They're agents of the temple secretly, right? Well, that is an anagram. Ranos Stavel, David L. Arneson.
Gremeg, me, Gary. Yes.
And those are the two people he had felt betrayed him at that very moment in time.
And over in the G series, you had Nosdra, Arneson.
Which is Arneson backwards, a grossly fat and cunningly evil person.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So Gary let some of that leak into his writing. And another person who he had felt betrayed him at that time was Rob and Terry Kuntz. They are Cobort and Taruko. Cobort is Robert K. and Taruko is Theron K. Terry K. So, but then you have people like, then you have characters like Jaru, that's just Tim Kask's name for his character. And Bernay, which is play on Ernie, which is his character in the game. And Rufus, which Skip's middle name is Ralph, although his nickname is Rufus. Anyways, his character was Rufus. And Terjan was Tim Jones, TRJ, I think are his initials, Tim R. Jones, Terjan. Anyways, that's where you get all that stuff. And of course, Robilar comes in, and Robilar is Rob. So you'll see a lot of those names are really well hidden in there.
Yes. So if you got mentioned in a Gygax publication,
it was either great or really bad.
yeah. Look at the context.
Yeah. But you got to understand how Gary's feeling right at this time. He had come out with the Monster Manual and was taking his first purposeful step away from Dave Arneson because he felt that Dave was not pulling his weight, and then left the company acrimoniously and for both parties. And then was, talking about suing Gary, and there was some acrimony there. And Gary was feeling it. And when he wrote Bad Guys, he was thinking of the bad guys in his perspective, the bad guys in his life.
Yeah. Look, I wasn't really thinking of Gary when I did this, but I have actually, I've done the same. I wrote under a pen name. So that was an unflattering stab at someone in the TTRPG industry. So, I've been there. I think I've told you what it is, Paul.
But it is part of, I don't know, it's part of the creative process, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you use stuff from your life and you channel it and filter it and transmogrify it into characters or situations or settings, and you use them in your game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
my players actually entered the Atari 2600 adventure game once accidentally in a wizard's lab. and the dragons in there ate them whole, swallowed them on a roll of 18 or better, but they didn't die. They just were trapped inside the dragon's belly. And none of their weapons can hurt any of the dragons. They had to find the golden spear, which when I was a kid, I thought it was a spear. I didn't have the rule book. I just thought it was a spear. I was holding it wrong the whole time. Apparently, it's a sword.
Yes, it's a sword.
But the only way they could get out, Bill, was to find the invisible moat. And by that, I mean MOTE.
Right.
Mm-hmm. See, I was using Easter egg. I was using Easter egg references in my game way before Ready Player One.
Nice. I will not I will not tell where because who knows, someday I may publish it, but my my mega dungeon actually has this room in it.
I love it.
if
and the name of what was the name of the wizard that the party was trying to rescue?
The name of the wizard?
Robinette.
Oh, right. Yeah. Warren Robinette. Yeah.
I don't know. Is anybody following us? I'm going to look over at the comments here. I don't think anybody knows what the hell we're talking about.
I don't know. I think
this should have been a phone call. This should not be on air. This should have just been a phone call between you and I.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. Hey, Paul, listen, we've got literally tens of people watching right now. So
it's wow, that's
tens of people. Gonzalo says, I mean, we know. And it's interesting. If you feel somebody stepping across your grave, I actually named an NPC in the Tuesday night live stream from you, and nice. Gonzalo's running that character now. He joined up.
Grimbrats is my name backwards, just in case you need a good name for a character. Lop Grimbrats.
Lop Grimbrats. Okay, I'll remember that. But no, they have Paul the Fighter.
That could be your next merchant of rare antiquities, which occasionally will slip a magic item in. Lop Grimbrat. Antiquarian.
Grimbrat and Antiquarian. I mean, the collector's trove practically sells itself as a merchant's wagon. I'm picturing it's laden. It's got stuff hanging from it. It's got strange grimoires and odd
and
devices.
A one-hole paper punch that says
and a one-hole paper punch. Yes.
Not even a three-hole paper punch. One hole.
No.
It did say Presto on the side, though.
There you go.
So apparently, Gonzalo says that it's Paul, and he slew an ogre magi with no help from anyone else.
That's right.
That sounds like me.
So the party hid out in the cheese curing room. For those of you who don't watch us on Tuesday nights, you are missing a lot of fun when we do our actual play of first edition AD&D. The party had a thief who was badly injured enough, and they said, hey, we got to hole up for a week while this guy gets better. We'll hide in this cheese room. So they hid in the cheese curing room in A2. And I figured I can roll 100. I think it's like 700 wandering monster checks, creatures that could come sticking their heads in. But I thought, that averages out to 166 valid encounters that they could have. But I figured, okay, there's the whole situation going on in A2 between Marquesa and Blackthorn, right?
Blackthorn, yeah, that's great.
Right.
I mean, so all those NPCs in there, Ikar, Marquesa, Blackthorn, they're just amazing.
So we're actually getting somewhere with tonight's deep dive, I promise.
Oh, good. I'm glad we're getting somewhere, because I feel like we're just going everywhere.
That's my show, dude. That's the way it goes.
It's a show about everything, everywhere, all at once.
precisely. But everybody, Paul is the Han Solo to my Chewbacca when we fly this ship across the airwaves. So
that's a big honor. I had a blaster made entirely out of Legos for the weeks following Star Wars, my viewing of Star Wars as a 10-year-old. So I'm good.
Excellent.
Everybody wanted to be Luke. I just wanted
absolutely. To be I came home and made an X-wing out of my Lego helicopter.
I love it.
So, yeah, it's like I built it like a model kit because I got it for Christmas and it sat on the shelf. And yeah, I played with it, but I was never, I want to tear apart and make it into other stuff. We get home from the Agricola Twin, May 1977. Yep. Give me. I immediately started making my own X-Wing. But
nice.
So A2, the party does not get attacked for the entire time they're resting up. Why? Because Blackthorn has cleared the hallways. No, don't go bother them. I have business with them. So he shows up and does the whole Yojimbo play where it's like, yeah, I got a little problem I need you to take care of. And the party's like, and hear us out, we could just murder you now and have one less problem to deal with. So they won initiative at key times, so they did not get Cone of Colded by Blackthorn. It is literally clutch. I'm like, all right, we're going to be rolling up new characters.
Softy, Bill.
They're going to be rolling up new characters because here comes 8 hit dice of cold, and Gonzalo laid the killing blow on him, just ripped him from shoulder to hip. But anyway, Slavers, the Temple series, the Drow, you have at least a couple of Drow show up in the Slavers series. So what is the I'm not sure how to ask the question that I feel like I need to ask about this, but what is the in-game timeline or the meta timeline? Because the Slavers series level wise, even into A2, we're not talking about a team that can tackle the deeper reaches of the Temple or even think about going after the Giants. And here we've got Drow popping out. What is the what is the what is the resolution here, Paul? What do you think? For Dungeon Master to Dungeon Master, guest to audience, how do you reconcile that? How do you bring that into a chronological balance, if you will?
Mm-hmm. Well, I am not familiar with there being any Drow in there, but the one Drow's in there, Edral, sorry.
Just keep talking, Stormberg. Just keep it with the facts, okay?
So, I mean, the reason why that character's in there is because Lawrence Schick and Tom Moldvay and Alan Hammock all thought Drow are the coolest, most evil, badass creatures that exist. They were just the coolest thing that existed at that time. And not a lot of people knew about them yet, but those guys knew about them. And they probably even knew that it's pronounced Drow and not
Look, you, me, and Alan Hammock are gonna have us a talk. Alan can referee it. I don't know if it's gonna come to blows between you and me, but we're gonna settle this at EggCon in a few weeks.
If we talk about the Temple, and we talk about the Drow series, whatever you want to say. If you talk about those two, remember that Gary says at one point he mentions that Loth had been dealt a sharp check in her plans. Mm-hmm. Who cares? Why would you want to have Loth involved with that? And then in the Gord the Rogue series, Gary says that the Temple was visited by some benighted Drow. And benighted, fooled, right?
Right.
And I think that ties into Gary's original concept of the Temple, which is that Iclavdra and Loth are currently involved in this power struggle to control elemental evil. Okay. Loth because she wants to become the greatest priestess of the elder elemental god on the planet. And,
right.
And Loth, to consolidate her power as the only god worshipped by Drow. And so that's the struggle. So when somebody gets that, what I call the elder keys, but Gary doesn't call them anything, what I call the elder keys, what happens when they open that egg? They're geassed into taking them back to Loth. In other words, wherever they end up on the planet, those keys, the elder keys, that sphere, the platinum sphere, wherever it ends up on the planet, whoever opens it is going to be geassed to take them back to Loth, because Loth does not want Eclavdra to have control of those keys. Now, maybe those benighted Drow Gary is talking about went to the temple to get the keys, maybe in a race to keep them away from Eclavdra, or maybe in a race to consolidate her power. You know, sort of a searching for the lost Ark of the Covenant or the Holy Grail during World War II, right?
Right.
And so it's clear that Gary thought that there was some way for dark elves. There, how's that? Is that neutral enough for you, Bill? That dark elves would be able to distribute themselves through the lands. So I don't think it is unusual that there is a dark elf in the Slaver series. I don't think that's unusual. Now, you could say that there's this whole unearth, because I can't say Underdark because it's Forgotten Realms. There's this whole unearth, this whole depths of Oerth that there could be a tunnel system going under the whole friggin' planet, or there could be outposts here or there. You could do whatever you want. Or, you know, there's that nifty gate they have in the city of the Drow that takes you to the abyss. Maybe they have a gate that can take you to the temple. Maybe they have a gate that can take you to another shrine. Heck, a high-level cleric, a priestess, can use word of recall to travel to an altar she's consecrated. Right? So there are ways of dark elves distributing themselves around the planet without having to have a teleport or a wish, or necessarily you could even go mundane. They could travel at night. Their equipment would all rot. Their equipment would all rot away. Right? But for a couple weeks, they could travel abroad. So I don't think there's a problem with having the dark elves in places around the planet. Did I answer your question?
You did answer my question, actually. You did answer my question.
I'm just talking.
That's fine.
Hey, Bill, I emailed you the doors to the Temple of Elemental Evil. Did you see my picture that I created of the doors of the Temple of Elemental Evil that I emailed to you?
I don't. They're not in my inbox, Paul.
What? Oh, I know why I didn't send. Because I'm on my other computer, and my email doesn't work on the computer.
Okay.
That's too bad. But I did share it with you on Facebook.
Oh, I'm not on Facebook.
You could download it from Facebook and upload it here, but I can't do it. I wish I could. Right. Can I share anything on this? I can't share anything on this.
Yeah. If you click the present button down there, you should have an option to present.
Oh, I see it. There.
Yep.
Well, let's see.
Click present, and it'll let you grab any image or anything like that you want.
Oh, yeah, I see that. That's nice. All right. Well,
Damien says,
a question. I love questions.
It's okay, Paul. The Underdark appears in Greyhawk as well. No matter what Watsy says, it's not Forgotten Realms exclusive. And it appears in the first World of Greyhawk it appears in the World of Greyhawk supplement. Sorry. it first appears in the World of Greyhawk supplement. You're walking on thin ice. Paul knows if it's there, he'll say so. But there are more than one drow in the Slavers series, but they're just a pair of unnamed merchants that can be observed heading into a tunnel. And if the party follows them down that tunnel, your Slavers campaign just got derailed. you are going to be running a different kind of campaign from that point forward in A2.
I'm learning, Bill.
He's learning. Learn. All right.
Do you see anything?
Yes, we do see stuff, Paul. We see a couple of guys examining some symbols on a wall.
Yeah, so that's I don't know. My picture is frozen. I can't see what's going on, but you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, so that's the Rosloff image from C2 Ghost Tower of Inverness.
Okay.
But I have taken the symbols from the door on the Temple of Elemental Evil and put them on there. So it looks like the guy is looking at the sealed runes on the Temple of Elemental Evil doors.
Okay. And what's do you have another image, or were you just sharing that one?
Well, you see that image, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so then there is, let's see. Can I share this? Stop sharing. And then I'm going to share this one, I think. Am I?
As soon as it comes up in
there
the back, all right.
Present. All right. Share screen again.
Yeah, you got to click like 6 times to share stuff. It's not terribly wieldy when you're in StreamYard.
All right. So I think this is what you're seeing. Can you see that?
Yes. It's
so that
Dungeon Master's copy at the top.
So I went through and looked at all of the symbols on the doors to the Temple of Elemental Evil, and there's some that are wrong. And I went and corrected them so that they matched the actual glossography and that they actually meant what they were supposed to mean. So the top runes, the funny star, the T-shape, the wagon wheel, and the star mean renewed warning to those holy and good. The second line, which are double X's, underbar, a cross with a canted crossbeam, and an underlined triangle, prisoner, privately housed here. What prisoner is that? Then the next line says who it is. And it says danger or dangerous, a demonic key of earth, air, water, and fire. And then below that, it says, and I won't be able to see this. Yes. It says good magic opposes the demonic powers of death and possession of 2 evils. And who are the 2 evils? Well, Ziggurat and Iaz, according to Gary at this time. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that. Let's see. And then the final part, which you can't see now because I had to read it. It says eternal warning to those holy and good. So now back to this. So all of those appear on this image that I just shared with you, which is the one here, showing all of those symbols there. And so basically all of those elements were there. It just wasn't done properly with the symbols from the glossography. It was sort of a mixture of the original folio and then the glossography, and then some made up stuff. Because I think that there was not great graphical presentation for that module. I think it was a bit rushed and not done very well.
Well, I mean, you know, I think here's some fairly on point runes that would show up there. You know, stay out. That's
that's a great one too.
Yeah,
and that's original. Gary drew those runes on the manuscript.
I remembered you mentioning those to me, but I had forgotten it till just now. Of course, this is by the great artist Jack Fred. Yeah, tell
Jack Fred.
Yes, tell them the story of Jack Fred.
Well, Larry Elmore would had a country bumpkin character that he would voice and act out for his kids to make his kids laugh. And I was Jack Fred. Jack Fred was just sort of a simple country guy, and Jack Fred did all sorts of funny things that made the kids laugh. And so anyways, when Larry did a piece of art that he really didn't like, but still had to turn in, he wouldn't sign his name on it. He'd sign Jack Fred.
Jack Fred.
And but this is not by Larry Elmore. This piece is by Jeff Easley, because all the other artists at TSR, when they created a piece of art they didn't like, started signing it Jack Fred. And so my guess is that they were put under an incredible rush to get this art done. You can tell some of the art is pretty shoddy. Some of it's pretty great, but
see, I don't think this door is that bad. I don't think the door is fine.
Well, but you know, it was just sort of you know, maybe Gary was like, you really have to do the door this way. There was some reason why Easley didn't like that piece enough to call it Jack Fred, but that's it.
Oh,
that's who Jack Fred is. Jack Fred is a country bumpkin made up by Larry Elmore to make his kids laugh on trips.
Yeah, I know.
Jack Fred kind of talks like this. They had a real funny drawl.
No, trust me, audience. I know all about door design. I know all about door design. So let's see what are some other unearthed bits of trivia about the temple that we have yet unplumbed. I mean, you know, we talk about the pedestrian stuff that, you know, this person on this note. Are there any famous bits of Greyhawk lore left stuck behind in the dungeon from Gary's earliest runnings through of characters through it? Any famous bones we might encounter? Anything like that?
Yeah, there's a couple of encounters that are still linked to the original one. The original dungeon was 3 levels.
Mm-hmm.
And the throne went up and down, and Ziggurat Moy was trapped in the original dungeon, and the original gambit there with the pillars is still there. There was, but I would say leftovers from that original dungeon. I mean, there's some interesting things, like, I don't know if Gary had written Humlet was the name of the town. Hummlet. Humlet, not Hamlet, but Humlet. And I did see on a map, there's 19 leagues to Sabanwich on one of the maps. I learned something about Gary's naming of things, like Sabanwich was originally on the map called Sobonk, Sobonc, right?
Okay.
And it was on the south bank of the Velver Diva. And to the northwest was Verbabank. And I started looking at all of these names and I was like, wait a second. Sobank on Gary's original map is Sobanwich in the later Greyhawk map, but it was originally called Sobank. And it was called Sobank and it was on the south bank. So the name of that town, Sobank, means south bank. Well, what does Verbabank mean? Well, Verbabank means Veluna, V-E, river, R, both banks. So the city is on both banks of the river. And when it was originally drawn, I think it was done by Rob Kuntz in WG8 Fate of Istis. It shows the river going right through the middle of the city.
Okay.
Because Rob knew that Verbabank was on both sides of the river. So Verbabank stands for Velverdiva River, both banks. Well, what does Velverdiva River stand for? Velverdiva River stands for Veluna to divers that's to Admonfort. So Veluna to Verbabank, Velver to Verbabank, Diva to divers to Admonfort. So Gary was taking bits and pieces of the words of their location and the places they went through and then stitching them all together to make the names. But it only came to me after I saw Sobank, original Temple of Elemental Evil campaign map that Gary had drawn for the kids back in 1977-78. Neat.
Well, very neat.
Verbabank. It means something, Bill. It means something.
It means something. This means something.
Emerity River, I think, means Emeridi means elemental. Temple, river to divers. And so that means that it's the river that goes on the temple and goes on to divers when it merges with the Velverdiva. Anyways, just a little bit of trivia for all of you folks who need to know this stuff.
Well, I mean, that's why we're asking. This is deep dive stuff that I couldn't have wrested out of the module. Let me ask you, because I was grousing about this the last time we did a deep dive. If you just describe a dungeon and don't give me a map, that's not a problem. I can figure something out. Sure. Hey, it's a room with 30 goblins in it. I know it's going to be more than a 10 by 10 room.
How about a room with 300 goblins, Bill? What would you
all wearing water buffalo hats?
That's right.
So,
hey, Barney.
So I got to tell you guys a story. Gary gave me a good bit of latitude to work on Teeth of the Barkesh Nor. And so I did that. Like, I moved, all the teeth were supposed to be with the slimy horror at the end. I said, hey, Gary, wouldn't it make, like, for parties that couldn't run the entire dungeon at once, to give them a little something to come away with? So we put the teeth, he let me move the teeth around. But we got to a point in the module where you go into the hills and there's an area just labeled Great Goblin Hall, 400 goblins led by a goblin king. And I thought, here is a prime spot for me to build like a Hobbit-esque goblin town, rooms, traps, workshops, breeding pits, prisoners you could rescue, that sort of thing. And I said, okay, can I make a dungeon and scatter these things around? No. So you just want 400 goblins in a room? Yes, don't change it. So when I was telling Paul about this, we were like, I guess they're just having a convention. It's just the Water Buffalo Goblins convention. They're all wearing fuzzy fezzes with little horns on them. when you guys when the party breaks in. So had Teeth of the Barkish Door gotten published, you guys would have been able to storm the annual Loyal Order of the Water Buffalo Goblin. I wouldn't have called it that. I don't think Gary would have thought that was funny at all. But yes, you would have walked into a room with 400 goblins in it. Time for overlapping fireball attacks. But anyway, to get back to this, I can suss out from descriptive text how to build a dungeon. I am the worst person in the world when it comes to outdoor maps, like terrain maps and cities and towns and villages and whatnot. Have you seen, do you know if there was a better map of Nulb? Because we got that incredibly detailed Hamlet map, and then Nulb is just kind of like, there's some places here.
Nope. What you get Gary's original map of Nulb, and you get his important encounters. He never fleshed out the rest of the place because that's where he kind of stopped with the manuscript. And so Frank didn't touch Gary's text on it. He just let it be and let it work like that. So that's why you get that, is because Gary had already fleshed out Hamlet to the point where he says that, you know, Mrs. McGinty has 3 copper pieces in her underwear drawer. You know, there's some detail in there that's really detailed.
Yeah.
And so he had done that whole thing, and then had created the little dungeon with the moat house, and then was moving on to the temple. And man, he had already created a whole village, and now he'd have to create another one. But most parties don't spend much time in Nulb at all. And if they do, they're putting themselves at tremendous risk because there's so many spies in there.
True. I mean, I am a bit dismissive. It's not. We're talking about the Nulb map. Let me see. It's not that sparse a map. You know, I give it a lot of grief, but it's not a bad map. Oops. Click down once. Where did it go? There it is. It's not a it's not a bad map. You don't quite get the same degree of fidelity that you do with Hamlet. Like each house is precisely this many squares. And
that is Gary's hand-drawn map. That is the precise map. And the temple is where it is. And if you were industrious enough to take a string and to make it slowly go around the bend, you would find out that Hamlet is indeed 6 miles from Nulb, and not the 21 or 27 miles that it ends up being in the world of Greyhawk. In the super module, you know what I mean. In the super module, yes. That's what I mean.
Yes.
So let me show you what the map looked like in the original campaign, Bill.
All right.
Let's see. I need to go to modules. I need to go to T1 to 4. I need to go to maps. I need to pull up my fun map. Where is my fun map? Where is it? I don't know. Where is it? Is it in here? I don't know where it is. That's not it. That's Emerity Battle Maps. I don't know. I can't read anything because this computer stinks. Countryside. I bet it's in Countryside. Here it is.
While you're okay, you've got that up because Gonzalo's got a question, but we'll get to your question.
Yes, just answer the question, and then I will pull up this.
Answer the question.
Fantastic map.
He says, "What does the Ostler think about the fleshing out of the Berghoff region of Greyhawk, mapping the towns and creating more content? What is your thought on that, good Ostler Gundegut?"
Well, I mean, you know, I used to think that Gary used the whole "I left areas gray" purposefully, was just kind of him saying, it was a clever way of him saying, not saying, you know, I didn't really want to do all these dumb towns. All right. I intentionally left this area gray. And so, but then I started seeing Gary's sort of genius of it, where he left gray areas. Like there's areas in G1 that we were talking about, which are just kind of behind piles of ruin and collapse. And somebody could dig those out and find out what's back there. Well, the game master would have to develop those and figure out what was back there. There's lots of areas in Greyhawk that anybody could fill out and create and kind of backfill to match their own sensibilities and their own campaign. So, you know, there's the old advertising sort of apocryphal tale of in the 50s, they created a cake batter that all you had to do was add water and mix it. And they found out that women were not buying these easy, convenient mixes. And when they did some surveys, they found out that the reason these women weren't doing it is because they made these cakes and brownies with their children. And the children got to add the milk, add the oil, and crack the eggs. And that was the reason why it was sort of a fun thing for the mother to share with her children. And that's why the cake mixes that you just added water to were not popular with women at that time, because they wanted to do something special with their children. And that's what they wanted. They wanted that involvement. And that is the exact model of Greyhawk. There is enough gray space in there for you to do whatever you want in the world. And with that, I say that detailing the Berghoff region is great. I think it's all fantastic to add it. And if it's to your taste, you know, more power to you. All right. And with that, I will show you my fill of around this place here. Where did it go? No, that's not what I want. I don't want to do that. Do that to me. I'm learning as I go. Share screen again. Here goes Paul again. He doesn't know what he's doing. Share screen. Don't share these tips again. I know what I'm doing. Boop. And boop.
And when I see it over here,
can you see that?
Will add to stage. Yes.
That is in the Temple of Elemental Evil module. Gary says, well, if you want to detail the area, Nulb is on the upper right corner on an 8.5 by 11 piece of graph paper. Hamlet is 2 sheets of hex paper over and 1 sheet of hex paper down. And so in total, there's 6 sheets of hex paper that make up the entire campaign area between Hamlet and Nulb. And the reason why players have to go through Nulb is there is no ford to the river. You cannot get across the Emerdy flow or the Emerdy River. You can't get across it. He even says in the text that you have to go 6 miles upstream to ford the river. But if you need to get to the temple, there's only one way to go, Bill, and that is through Nulb. In the original campaign, that is the only way to get to the temple, is to go through Nulb. If you don't go through Nulb, you don't get to the temple. And guess what? When you're wounded and bleeding and have a wagon full of treasure, you have to go through Nulb too.
And then you hear those.
So look at the map, Bill, and look at the size of Hamlet. You can see it's a little tiny speck down there.
Yep.
You can see the moat house in between. It's like the size of an eraser head.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the town of Nulb. But look at the size of the temple complex.
Yeah.
It's huge.
It is huge.
It's bigger than Nulb. It's bigger than Hamlet. It's enormous. But the way I did that map, Bill, was I took photocopies and shrunk them down until they were the same scale as the map Gary had laid out. So you could see how those all fit on there.
Right.
And Emeraldy Meadows is right there northwest of Nulb. Anyways, so that is the original campaign arrangement, with the temple being 7 miles from Hamlet, 6 miles to Nulb, and then about another mile to the temple up in the hills above the town.
That is that is an amazing map. Have you ever, other than here just now, have you ever released this map to the public?
Yes, I released it on the Dragon's Foot forums, and a couple people wrote their campaign around it, and and some people,
Nice.
One guy even did a really beautiful graphical version of it.
Oh.
You know, actually went in and edited it and did a good, really amazing job of it. But
Nice.
You can see the moat house is kind of in a weird place between Hamlet and the temple. And it's kind of at a crossroads. It kind of guards the road between the temple and Hamlet. But it's really kind of off in a sort of, a marshy area. So any questions about the map? Because I can't see it for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah. Anybody out there got any questions about the map? Damien says 6 miles in the snow uphill. That's how we did it, with graph paper in our hands.
Yeah. Oh, now I can see it. Yay. So what I did, Bill, was for every square, I used the Dungeon Master's Guide to generate what was there. So I rolled a hamlet of halflings, and that's what's in the northwest. And then I rolled up a little thorp, and that's the Thorp of Versifor. And then I wrote up a thicket. And then, I just went through and created all of these things. And so there's an old quarry, and there's a boar's thicket, and there's an old stump, there's a druid hill, there's all sorts of great things. But that upper northwest corner, that is exactly what Gary's actual map looked like.
Wow, that is neat, Paul. That is.
And then, of course, everything
really
around Hamlet, that's exactly as it appears in the adventure module. And then I just kind of extrapolated and drew everything from there. But that's when I took the string and ran the string in kind of a winding fashion between Hamlet and Nulb to make it 6 miles. Which in there, they say it takes 2 hours, which traveling at a rate of a league per hour, and it's 2 leagues away. And so it's 2 hours to get from Hamlet to Nulb, but to get to the temple, you have to go through Nulb to get there. You can't cross the Emerdis Run. Anyway.
Well, and that's where your party gets to hear the 7 scariest words anyone can hear under those circumstances. You ain't from around here, is you?
All right. I'm going to stop sharing, Bill.
Okay. You've shared enough, Paul. No, that is wonderful. By the way, and I'm gonna, speaking of sharing, I'm just putting the link back up there because we had already blown past it. If you guys want to dig deeper and not have to come back and watch the video and keep pausing and watching and pausing and but you can. I appreciate the views. You absolutely can. There, once again, in the chat is a link to the Earth Journal where Paul grills Gary with his, see, in 2001, you're like interviewing, you're asking Gary like important stuff. And, my lame ass sounded like I'm going through second puberty voice in my interview I did with him, like almost exactly a year later. No, but you've got a great many good questions there. So guys, audience members, I do recommend you guys grab that PDF and check it out. It is some awesome slices of wisdom. And I should mention real quick that this might be of interest to you, Paul. I've shared the link to my interview that I did with Gary, because I did a little photo montage and stuck it together and uploaded it to YouTube. The folks who've listened to it for the first time have appreciated it. But if you, I think maybe you've heard some of it, possibly. I don't know. But there is
your Gygax interview.
Yeah, my Gygax interview.
Yeah, I've heard the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
That
it's something.
I mean, it really is, Bill.
But that buzz, because I had shitty analog landlines at the time.
Well,
I've actually had a couple of people who are audio engineers approach me like, "Hey, we can clean this up." They love TTRPGs, and they're like, "It would be a joy to go through and clean this up." And I'm thinking of taking them up on it. I'm thinking of seeing if they can sanitize that and get that buzz out of the audio. Of course, the next step to make it really great would be just to cut out my voice entirely. Just have Gary talking for the resultant 40 minutes, and just let people guess by the context who it was talking on the other end was saying. But no, I may do that. Keep your ears open for that, and I may get a cleaned up version out there. We'll have to see. Now there was something else I was going. Okay, so the elevator that runs through the back of the temple. I say the back of the temple if you're looking at it, on the map. If you were standing in the south end of the
Bill, you've come up with the great conundrum, the great contradiction, the great problem.
Yes. The elevator. What's up with that elevator, Paul?
Dude, well, you asked me what was left from the original temple, Gary's original 3-level Temple of Elemental Evil.
Yes.
The elevator was there, baby. That was definitely there. And so you have a problem and you need to fix it. Here's the problem. There's a lot of thrones in this adventure, and unless you invent bunk thrones, you have a problem if you lower that throne that's up there to the lower throne, because you're going to land on a completely different throne. So here's my solution, Bill. The purplish basalt throne that's up at the top.
Right.
That's an illusion.
Okay.
If someone with true seeing looks at it, they will see the horrible fungus and mushrooms coming out of people's eyes and ears and death and all sorts of demons cavorting. That's what they would see with true seeing. But once it descends down to Ziggurat Moy's level, then it looks like the shit. Then it looks like the evil throne that it is down there.
Okay.
Otherwise, bunk thrones. Because there's a throne down there and there's a throne up here. What happens when it comes down here? I don't know. Now, there's another throne. And guess where that throne is? It's directly below these other 2 thrones. So there are 3 thrones. There is the purple basalt throne. There is the mauve fungoid demons cavorting, rotting human souls and flesh. And then below that, there's a silver one in the super secret area in the beam of light, right?
Right.
So what it really should be is one throne. It comes down from the upper temple. It can go all the way to Ziggurat level. It can go all the way to the bottom. There is no third throne there. There's only one throne during that entire area. That is it.
Of course.
The other throne is the silver throne that is Ziggurat Moy's in her throne room area. And that's her non-traveling throne. Although it does travel, doesn't it? Anyways, so there are 2 thrones. There's one throne which goes from the upper temple all the way down to the greater temple, to the nexus, as I call it. The nexus, interesting to call it that, but the nexus. And then there's the other silver throne, which is in Ziggurat Moy's throne room.
I mean, you know, I don't know that I'll ever run. Although now that I'm armed with this information, I might run Temple again. This is much better than what got published. But
well, my party has run through what I believe would have been the ultimate expression of Gary's original campaign arc. And I don't know, they're like 13th or 14th level. So they are basically trying to recover all of the Elder Keys. In my campaign, Lareth defeats them in an ambush after they get involved with a battle of the Greater Temple. He ends up getting all of the keys from them and the Death Orb. And then he takes it to Nulb, wipes the entire town out with floods and fires and earthquakes and tornadoes. And then he takes the 4 keys out and drops the skull in the mud, and then goes off west to deliver the keys to his boss, the Demon Queen of Spiders. And that is how Loth ends up with the Elder Keys. In my campaign.
In your campaign. But
here's the other way it could happen, Bill. The party could destroy the temple, and the keys are swallowed up by a fiery crack which opens up in the earth, and they drop into the abyss, kind of like a talisman of lawfulness.
Right.
But in my campaign, everything that falls into the abyss from talismans of lawfulness, they fall all the way through the abyss, except they're caught on the 222nd plane in Loth's web. So that is the other way that Loth could get the keys, is that anything that falls into the abyss is caught in Loth's web. That's the purpose of her plane, is to catch all the cool crap that's falling in the abyss.
Did she catch Grast when he fell back into the abyss after?
Oh, that's another thing.
That's we got to talk about Grast and
somebody asked, why would the Drow equipment rot? Well, because it can't be away from its homeland.
Yes, it must be exposed to the radiations of. Must be exposed to the radiations of.
In the darkness, though, Bill, it just becomes non-magical.
Yeah, that's true.
However, as the funny Far Side thing goes, it was at that moment that Dracula realized that the moon is just a reflection of the sun.
Yeah.
So maybe the Drow have to travel on moonless nights so that their weapons don't rot.
It could be. Or maybe they deign to carry mundane items from the surface.
Well, I think as long as they only traveled at night, the only thing that would happen is in 2 weeks or so, they would start losing pluses to their weapons, and eventually they would become mundane. But they're still adamantite steel weapons, so they're still, usable for that. But in any event, it is not impossible for Drow to travel around the Flanaess through non-magical means.
Or perhaps they have a leaden chest with a few flakes of Tumkioite.
Oh, don't say that. My party discovered a lead coffer that had a small fragment of a decaying mauve piece of rock, and it seemed to be ashen, but it glowed bluish when it was looked upon with infravision. And they were like, what is this piece of junk doing in this room hidden in the bottom of the Temple of Elemental Evil? I know what it was doing there, but they still haven't figured it out.
You know what it was doing there.
Yeah, that's a very good thing. And you know what, Bill? Don't tell any players, but that would really screw up the Drow if you blew up their moon. That's no moon. That's Tumcuite. If they blew that thing up, there would be problems.
Oh yeah. Engine Joe says, so Loth is a spider. She catches things as they fall into the abyss. I wish MW and TRH were more open to using Planescape and Ravenloft with the Dragonlance. I'm not a
Who's MW?
Margaret Weiss.
Oh, okay.
Tracy Hickman, Margaret Weiss.
Okay. Well, sorry, I'm just not up with the kids' lingo these days.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Engine Joe is our resident Dragonlance guy.
I guess that makes you BS, Bill.
Yeah,
and it makes me PJs.
Yeah, I guess. Well, now Paul and I have talked about this, and we're meandering far afield. Hello, Engine Joe. But we are meandering far afield here. But what else is new? Firmly
all the wheels within wheels around Greyhawk.
All the wheels within wheels. I absolutely believe. Like, I don't suspect. This is one of those things. I sincerely, for a myriad of reasons, but one of these specifically, wish that Gary was still alive, because I would say, Gary, I got you sussed. I figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
Loth and her handmaidens are taken from Japanese myth. They are temple maidens.
Mm-hmm.
The Yochlol are the yokai, and the names are so similar as
they are.
And Loth herself is a Jorogumi. She is a temple maid. Now, the Jorogumi in Japanese myth could be tragic, they could be romantic, they could be evil. Forget the first two. Loth is just evil. she is just straight up evil. But the formless and occasionally beautiful women, yokai or yokalol, that's straight out of Japanese myth. That is straight out of Japanese myth. It is. So I think Gary just moved them whole cloth into Greyhawk. So
well, and Gary was a big fan of Japanese storytelling, and
and
that whole thing. And but I had a thought that they were very well. So Sutherland said Gary contributed a couple of encounters. Are those 3 encounters that I mentioned for the Q series, right? For the Demon Web.
Right.
Those are those 3 elemental rooms I described.
Where we've agreed Loth does not die.
And Gary contributed 1 monster. What monster is that? Probably the Yochlol. However, what do the Yochlol look like?
They are formless, fog-like beings.
Yeah, but when they're in their form, they've got 8 pseudopods, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or tentacles.
Yes.
And then they have 1 big eye.
Yes.
And guess what else has 1 big eye and a bunch of tentacles?
An octopus or a squid.
The Elder Elemental God.
Okay.
Has 1 big eye and a lot of tentacles.
See, I didn't know the Elder Elemental God had 1 big eye and a bunch of tentacles. So that's new to me.
In G3, Gary describes the Elder Elemental God, and it is a vaguely squid-like creature with a single giant eye and an octopus-like beak and 10 tentacles or arms, with it snatches up its prey and tears them into bloody gobbets to be eaten as dainty morsels. That's a direct quote.
Yes.
So mottled purple. So basically a giant squid-like creature. So I was wondering if the Yochlol were supposed to be servants or creatures of the Elder Elemental God, because they look like the Elder Elemental God. But this, I don't know, because Gary was not able to complete that arc.
Yes. And I mean, it's certainly possible. Like I said, I lean into the Japanese, but I mean, it's not like Gary was bound
I agree.
to just
I did
do
not
it
know
one
that,
way.
but I do agree. I think that's something worth looking into.
Someone mentioned there's also, and we're going very far afield at this point, but I think it's certainly a valid mention at least.
It's great.
Daniel Rowan
So
mentions
fun.
Zaragon from B4. Zaragon, 8 tentacles, 1 eye, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's certainly something, something to consider.
Do you see my picture of the Elder Element God? Here it comes.
Oh boy. That looks like the work of one Mr. Errol Otis there, yeah?
Indeed it is. He said, well, the way you described the Elder Elemental God was he was so huge, I couldn't figure out how to depict him on the screen. So this is how he did it.
There you go, just forcing
that is the beak and the eye of the Elder Elemental God. And notice how its pupil is triangular or star-eyed.
Yeah. Yeah. Wave of Mutilation says that tentacle to eyeball ratio is off.
Well, indeed it is.
And come on, if you're gonna have a TSR artist present some or represent something that horrible, it's gonna be Errol. You know, you get your swords out with you know, with somebody like Dave LaForce or, you know, even Tracy Lesh, but when it's just time to show something horrible in a fantastic way, Errol Otis is your
something Lovecraftian has to be done by Errol.
Although, I mean, we cannot forget Tracy created the first Mind Flayer look for us. So
and I think that yeah, I think he showed me his original picture of, I think it was a beholder, but it was more like a sort of a creeping roper on the ground sort of version of the beholder. That would have been great. It was cool.
Wait, Tracy did?
Yeah. He had an original drawing of the beholder that was
I have not seen such.
Terrestrial. That was terrestrial. Next time you see him, ask him if he's got a pic of it.
I will have to. We gotta have Tracy.
But it was rejected because beholders have to float.
This, I'm sure you know, this was actually going to be the first full color piece of D&D art. This is Tracy's work here. That's not an original, by the way. He did not give me his original art piece. That's a canvas print that they gifted me. But yeah, that was going to have been the first published piece of color TSR art, and for reasons I don't understand, you may have a million pages of lore behind it, Paul, but they decided not to go with it.
So these temple handmaidens.
Yes. The yokai, the Yaklal.
What are they called?
The yokai.
Yokai. And what is their purpose?
Well, let's look it up. I'm a little rusty. And it was actually my oldest daughter likes a YouTube show called Overly Sarcastic Productions. Despite the name, the lady who does them puts together these fantastic animated views of literary creations, mythology, just amazing little cartoons. And she did a lot of stuff on
yes.
The
yokai are supernatural entities, spirits, and phenomena found in Japanese folklore. They encompass a wide range of shifting beings, including ghosts, demons, monsters, shapeshifters, Mischievous, helpful, or even dangerous have been a part of Japanese culture for centuries. La, 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 la. Interesting.
Yes.
Book.
Yes. But they just depending on what era you could you might draw them from, they have different appearances, but the shape-shifting form, that fits, I think it absolutely fits. And
have you ever run them in combat, Bill?
I have not, and I'm a little scared too.
I will give you some official upgrades to make them not so terrible.
So, and
they don't stand up too long to a 13th level fighter, I'll just say. Like they're dead in 2 melee rounds, sort of thing. Oh yes, very nice.
That
looks like a bug.
That is the Seiken Jorogumo. That is what they are. And let me see here. They are a kind of yokai. It can shapeshift into a beautiful woman. They can also refer to some species of spiders. Yeah, so if you go through,
I mean, that's spot on, Bill. I'd say abs.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Rowan said beholders are pure entertainment. Well, for the game masters, they're pure entertainment. For players, not so much.
I must admit, with not just a little bit of embarrassment, I don't think I've ever used them properly. I had one fireball the party, but they were spread out far enough that it didn't really get enough of them, and another disintegrated a magic user. But both times the party brought so much to bear, the fight was really over before it became the terror that I wanted it to be.
Yeah, it really is. There's a big problem with AD&D and all the glass cannon monsters. And I have a solution for this that has made the monsters a lot more challenging for the players. For example, the Elder Elemental God has 11 melee attacks plus its eye. So it doesn't matter how many characters there are, somebody is getting hurt. Every person in the party has the potential to get hurt every single round.
Well, I mean, it's D&D Cthulhu, of course it does. It's like, I would hope so. But I even I threw a Shoggoth. Shoggoth are 10 hit dice. They hit for like multiple 3 to 24 damage attacks or something awful like that, or 3 to 30 attacks like that. I threw an actual Shoggoth at the party. They thought at first they were facing a black pudding, and then I'm like, no, it's laughing. It's making sucking noises. It's tittering. It's doing a high-pitched whistling at you. And one person or actually a couple people at the table were like, oh shit. But no, just a couple of rounds. I think I hit one person for like 8 points of damage. It was the saddest Shoggoth in all of the underground ruined city that I had. And I was just,
oh, well. So that's it. Those players, you just gotta come up with something. So, Dave Sutherland's room that's dark with 10 trolls in it.
Yes.
I was like, well, this isn't going to be a challenge at all for my party. So I made it a room that had motes of blackness in it. That these motes were like little antimatter motes that absorbed light as soon as it was created. So if you cast a continual light spell in there, it doesn't take effect. If you cast a fairy fire, all the light is absorbed. No matter what you do, it's dark. Infravision doesn't work because it's absorbing all the heat as well. It just doesn't. I just made it so that it was magically dark and could not be. And so the party is currently facing 10 trolls in a room that they cannot make light at all. But the trolls have trained themselves over time to smell and feel out their opponents and eat them in the dark. So that is how I changed the room to challenge a 13th level party. Oh, and the other thing is, if the trolls hit with both claws, they throw your character deeper into the room where there are more trolls. Let me tell you, the 13th level magic user is now facing 2 trolls in the dark by himself, and he did not like it.
I can imagine. So, so you've got a pretty full dance card for the rest of the spring and summer. We'll bump into each other at EggCon, and what's after that? Are you doing North Texas or?
North Texas has passed. And
okay. I thought it was later in the summer.
I used to be a special guest at North Texas. Doug and I were friends, and he invited me down there, and it was great. I ran a lot of stuff down there, but then Doug passed away, and the leadership changed. And, I just can't afford to do more than Gary Con and Gary Con. I can't even afford to do Gen Con. I mean, Gary Con cost me like $5,000 to put on every year. So I can't really afford to do other conventions. I go if I'm invited as a guest. I was invited to Arnicon, which is in October. I was invited to EggCon by Heidi and Eric Garland. Very nice of them. And so I'm looking forward to that. That's in July. But then in between those two, Bill, and everybody should know this, is the world's greatest convention. But it's not a convention. It's the Dragon Days Fall Fantasy Festival in Lake Geneva.
That's right. Dragon Days Fall Fantasy Festival.
I am the co-chairman of Dragon Days. And Dragon Days is a celebration of Lake Geneva as the birthplace of D&D and really the birthplace of fantasy. And people test me on that. And I say, listen, what other small town in the world produced over 360 fantasy novels? What town, Bill? Lake Geneva. What town created the North America's largest tabletop gaming convention? Well, that was Lake Geneva. And where was D&D written and published? Well, that would be Lake Geneva. And so to me, for all sorts of artists and creative types and game designers and people all over the world who have played D&D or have made a career out of being part of D&D owe that to what was created in that little town of Lake Geneva. And so last year, Bill, we had 984 paid adults, and I think we had over 900 children attending, and this is 12 and under kids. And then we had probably another 900 walk-ups. So it was around 2,600 to 2,800 people who attended the festival. And basically, it's a citywide festival that has a fantasy Renaissance fair in the town park on the north shore of Lake Geneva, which is just gorgeous. And then we have gaming in Horticultural Hall.
Of course.
And we had tables set up just to teach people who had never played D&D. They could sit down, get a character sheet, a set of dice, and be given a scenario and run a scenario for them that would teach them how to play D&D. We had hundreds of families and children learning to play D&D for the first time. We also had the museum was open, and you could get in using your Dragon Days wristband to see the Wizard of Lake Geneva exhibit. We had a children's storytelling hour and author signings at the library, where we have our Appendix N alcove, which are the 100 books Gary said influenced his writing of D&D. And there we had them read a novel about a small Japanese fisher boy named Ruko, who is the hero of a story that saves his village from the octopus king, who takes all the fishermen down to his watery empire below the sea. Let's see, what else is there? We have a hay bale dungeon maze where kids can go on a live action D&D adventure. We had a medieval blacksmith showing you how to blacksmith. We had a medieval archer who taught you how to shoot arrows into orcs and goblin targets. I mean, we had musicians and acrobats, and we also did tours of the 330 Center Street, run by yours truly, where you got to find out what it was like when Dave Arneson came down and introduced the game to Gary, and what it was like when Gary first played D&D and ran Greyhawk Adventures on his dining room table at 330 Center Street. So in addition to all of that, your wristband gets you into the local theater for free to watch Dungeons and Dragons cartoons and to be able to watch the D&D movies. And then we even have a deal with the local merchants. They have special menu items and discounts for anybody with a wristband, and they can come in and get, dragon wings, which are their buffalo wings, and pixie punch, which is Shirley Temples, and that sort of thing. And so it really is the entire city that is the festival.
Well, that's
the end of my spiel.
It is a wonderful spiel. God, I hope I can make it up there someday.
If you scroll down a little bit, you can see Heidi Gygax cutting the silver cord as we dedicated our first Dragon Days last year for the 50th anniversary of D&D.
Well, I think that answers the question somebody else was asking up above. They said, is there a Lady of Lake Geneva? Well, there was that day.
Yeah, look at her holding up the sword. And there was so much rain, she was like she was in the lake.
Right?
It poured rain until we had our lovely opening ceremony, and then it was dry for 1 hour, and then we ended a ceremony, and then it started raining again.
Well, maybe it's like, when they say, rain on your wedding day is actually good luck. So hopefully this was good luck. And,
the second year, like I said, we had 2,800 people. So it was a huge, huge success.
Well, it looks like a ton of fun.
So this year, Bill, it's October 4th and 5th.
That is neat. That is very, very cool, dude. And just going by the photos there, it looks like an absolute blast. Like I said, I hope I can make it someday. And if anyone here is in that neck of the woods, I recommend you make it up there, because stuff like this is foundational. Look, let me tell you, Paul knows what I'm about to say, but guys, bring it in a little bit. Look, you can go to Indiana. All right. You can go to Indianapolis. You can be one of literally 110,000 people crammed into a convention center, watching other people play current year Dungeons and Dragons, who think Gary Gygax is a cartoon character made up for Futurama. Or you can go here, you can breathe clean air, be outdoors, and frankly, a beautiful, beautiful little lakeside town. You can see where it all began, where this sprang forth fully armored like Athena from the forehead of genius, from the forehead of Zeus, from Gary's genius. And that, I've been to some events in Lake Geneva that have all been a ton of fun. Every report you bring back to us, Paul, every pitch you make tells me that this is just a sagacious blast. And so to all you folks out there who can make the trip. And that's just my backing, Paul. If that's Dungeon Delver to you guys, make the trip. But Wave says, I guess Kennick makes it to this. I guess she does. I don't know, but I presume that she does. So I guess then we've had all of our little corners, odd little boxes and corners and hidden away places completely filled out and fleshed out for Temple of Elemental Evil. We've talked about Dragon Days. Is there anything else, Paul? Anything else we need to do that we haven't taken care of?
Yes, shared screen there.
All right.
Wait, did I share the screen? I think I shared the screen. I tried to share the screen.
I shared the screen.
Let's see.
Are we supposed to be looking at the dragon on the lake now?
That's what you're looking at. Art done by D of our adventures map, Lake Geneva, which you can go to LB Games and pick that. It's about a 1 to 2 hour walking tour map of Lake Geneva, of all the historical sites where Gary came up with ideas for various things. But mentioning the lake monster and is Jeff D's interpretation of Jenny, the lake serpent in Lake Geneva, and all the kids on the boat there. The kid with the cap gun is Don K. The kid with the sword and helmet is friend Dave Dimery. His other best friend, Don K, is the guy with the cap gun. John Rash is the one with the oar in the water. Mary Jo Powell is the one with the pirate hat throwing the at
of course, the pirate queen
for dear life. And so that was Gary's play group when he was a young kid, and running around town and exploring the lake and going into the sanitarium, Oak Hill Sanitarium, and just basically, you know, being a kid wild and free in the 50s and in the 50s, 60s, and 70s in Lake Geneva. 50s and 60s in Lake Geneva. So
right on, yeah.
But that's on our walking tour map, which you can. And, all the proceeds for those go to the Gygax Memorial Fund. But it's an amazing way to connect with the history of the city of Lake Geneva and Dungeons and Dragons. Shows you where Gary found the first rust monster. Shows you the first headquarters of TSR, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth headquarters of TSR, and tells stories about each places. You find the graveyard where Gary and his buddy pretended to wear from behind gravestones to frighten people as they walk by the graveyard. Shows the house where Gary grew up and had several encounters with ghosts and supernatural activity. It's just a really cool way to kind of tour the town and connect with Gary's life there and the history of this game we all love.
Well, right on. And it's like I said, it's absolutely worth doing, guys. Paul, thank you, man. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight, brother. I really appreciate it.
Have we been on for 3 hours? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, yes, we have. Yes, we have.
We should split this into 3 shows, Bill.
I should, you know, well, and the funny thing is people land on my YouTube page, I think, and they leave because they're like, this guy doesn't do videos. His last video was like 3 months ago. They never click the live tab and see the fact that I've got like 1,000 live shows that I've done with great guests like you and I mean, I've done like 4 shows with Alan Hammock. I've got my interviews, of course, with the late great Jim Ward. There's 4 of those. I think every living major TSR artist has been on the show. And because they're live streams, Nobody ever sees them. They just see that, here I am bitching about Wizards of the Coast for 10 minutes 4 months ago. And that, so maybe I should cut this into pieces and upload it. Or shorts, I guess, are the thing now on YouTube. Paul, I love you like a brother. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do YouTube. Don't do it. It's insanity.
Hey, I spent $27,000 creating a podcast that I made no money on. I love this stuff so much, I'm willing to throw away hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Listen, the next time that urge comes upon you, just remember, I could really use a little bit of extra cash, and it might be more fulfilling than a podcast. I'm just kidding you.
Well, let me tell you about the $10,000 I invested in pot stock once.
In what stock?
Pot stock.
Pot stock. Like weed, like grass.
Yeah, like weed. Like it was going to be there was a referendum on like 20 or 30 state legislatures to legalize marijuana. And it looked like they were going to pass in most of those states. And so my wife had an inheritance of $10,000 from her mother, and she decided we needed to invest it in something. So we asked around, and her brother said, well, I invested in this pot stock, and it doubled in just a couple months. And they're going to have this on the referendum. I think it's going to do really well. So that pot stock is now worth $5.
Oh.
Moral of the story is if you're Paul Stormberg, don't invest.
Oh my gosh. Well, on that note.
Moral of the story, children, keep your money.
Keep
buried
your money
in the backyard in a mason jar.
Absolutely. Anyway, listen, man, it was great having you here. Will, you know what? I think the next live stream you and I do together, we should be sitting at a table having a beer at EggCon. That's what I think we should be doing. Oh, you weren't going to let me get away. I was sitting here. I was like, I'm going to grab my copy. Nah, I'm not going to. All right, Paul. I'm thirsty for revenge. Yes, I do. Yes, I do, Paul. I do see that.
It's got the good gentleman's signature on it.
Do you see that? Mine does too.
That was the last time they were together, Gary and Jeff.
I do not have Jeff's signature in here, but I do have Gary's. All right, Paul. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Do it. Oh, we're not hearing him. Oh no.
Joust.
Okay.
Rocks. Coconuts today. Okay.
All right.
Aim point.
My aim point.
Sir William, aim point.
Sir William, my aim point is base. Because I'm all about that base.
No, you're Sir William. Good. What's your aim point?
My aim point is let's see. My aim point is base. I'm aiming for the base.
Okay.
What is your defensive position?
I chose lean left.
You, sir, are unhorsed.
Very nice.
Right out of the saddle.
5 points. Okay.
Yes.
And I chose L. What was your defensive position?
You chose which? Oh, he's breaking up. Damn it.
Center pale.
Center pale. Okay, center pale. I actually chose steady seat. So center pale is broken lance. All right. So you, sir, have a broken lance.
Okay, Bill, I'm back.
All right.
What was the result? Because I didn't hear any of that.
Okay. So you were unhorsed because I aimed for base and you leaned left.
I think the tornadoes are hitting Bill's. Yep.
And let's see. I did steady seat, and
then I am center pale
is broken lance.
Okay, second ride.
Second ride. All right, Paul. I have my aim point and I have my defense. What is your aim point, Paul?
Okay, I have aimed Fess Pale.
Fess Pale. Okay, my defense was shield high. That is broken lance, unhorsed, and injured.
Oh. Saving throw. You need an 11 or better.
I need an 11.
Hey. I did not mean you, my dear friend. You got a splinter. You got to through the eye.
I did not make my saving throw. All right. Well, perhaps perhaps.
But then, like in the movie, what was it? Was it the Knights of the Round Table? I will come up and I will embrace you and I will lay hands upon you as Lancelot and bring you back to life. Have you ever seen that movie? It's a great
scene. I have not. I have not. Thank you, brother. I, however, was aiming for.
So that is worth. So I have 9 points. Currently have 5 points, but you have a chance to get back at me.
Yes. I was aiming sinister.
I chose steady seat. What did you choose?
I chose Sinister Chief. Glanced off. You battered my lance.
Blow.
Oh, glancing blow. Okay.
So that's worth 1 point.
So 6 to 9.
You have
third
6,
pass,
and I have.
Yes.
Bill.
So third pass pays all.
Gonna have to use some real strategery here.
All right.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, I am ready also. So, I have my aim point.
Yost. Okay.
All right, Paul, I have chosen Dexter Fess. Your defense, sir.
And I chose steady seat again. Again. I didn't change my mind.
All right. My lance is broken. It's not a good night to be Sir William. All right.
What did you choose?
I chose Dexter Fess against steady seat.
Yes, and I so yes. So 2 points to you. So you have 6, and alas, I have 9. You know, I shall just tip my lance to you, and not injure you again and possibly maim your beautiful countenance.
You are a man of honor, Sir Paul. Sir Stormberg.
Thank you for an excellent job. You not die during this event.
Well, thank you for an excellent evening, Paul.
Thank you, Bill.
And we'll catch you on the flip side. Everybody else, while Paul returns to the green room and helps himself to some Hennessy and pistachios, I will tell you guys, I will be back tomorrow night. We are going to play some more Gamma World. Who will survive and what will be left of them in the radioactive wastes of North America in the 24th century? You'll have to tune in and find out, everybody. Until that time, be good to each other, because while I don't know if there are any in the Temple of Elemental Evil, I can tell you straight up, lurking out in the parking lot is at least one owl bear. Peace. Good night. Love you all.
Have you seen my owl bear? Here's to all the weirdos everywhere, in the woods and in the air. Have you seen my owl bear? Should I shave off all my hair? Bobs are all around, some live in tunnels underground. Some are fat, some are rich, some are sleeping in a ditch. Can you ride a crooked horse without a saddle, way off course? Naked as a toad, all the way to Smoky Joe's. Have you seen the little creep driving fast in his little green Jeep? He smells like fish and brandy, but his rotten teeth look dandy. Take me to the show, I don't care if fast or slow. From action flicks to dancing dicks, just take me to the show.